War must be while we defend our lives against a destroyer who would devour all. But I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend. Captain Faramir in J.R.R. Tolkien's masterwork, The Two Towers. Well, welcome back, everybody, to Bright Hearth. This week, I am not joined by my lovely wife, Lexy, and you'll see why in a moment here. This episode idea actually came from a listener at the County Before Country conference. I can't remember even who it was, but it was a gentleman. He came up and he said, before you guys wrap up this season, we've been walking through the rooms of the house, asking how, what domestic arts and arts of a productive Christian household need to be recovered and, really enjoyed and skillfully undertaken in each room. We were wrapping up the season and he said, you've got to do one on the gun cabinet. And I said, well, I'm not fortunate enough to have a whole room in my house that is the gun cabinet. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that listener, you were a genius. Because if you build a glorious, productive Christian household, but then you don't ever think about defending it, and defending it in every way, as you'll see in this episode, then you actually are not building an anti-fragile sort of thing. You're building something that's very vulnerable, that can be knocked down, where tragedy can intrude easily. And so we're going to talk about home defense on a lot of levels here in this episode in the gun cabinet. And I started to outline the episode, and then I realized I'm not a specialist on this front. I have a home. I have an everyday carry set up. I, think about protecting my family. But I just kind of ran into the edges of my own expertise. And so, as a lot of you guys know, if you've listened to Bright Hearth for any length of time, we really don't just want to give you nice, shiny principles hanging in midair somewhere. We really want to give you practical, blue-collar, applied theology, applied principles, and make them excellent principles, excellently applied. So Lexy and I talked, and we decided that it would be a good idea to see if our good friend, local churchman here in Ogden, Joshua Adams, would join us for the show. And with the timing, it worked out where Lexy's at home with the kids. So I'm going to do a solo interview here with my friend Joshua, who is here in the studio with me. So Joshua, welcome to Bright Hearth. Good to have you.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad when you said yes to this interview request. I was like, our listeners are going to be really helped by this. So Joshua, maybe let's start with just having you introduce yourself to our listeners, who you are, your family, and why our listeners should listen to you on this subject.
Well, I'm only here because I didn't want to go under church discipline. So.
That's how I get guests. I threaten them. If you knew Joshua, you'd know it'd be funny for me to threaten Joshua because he could harm me physically.
So Joshua Adams, I'm a retired Marine Corps gunnery sergeant. Very unique childhood. I've been around firearms my whole life. My dad actually was a bounty hunter. And I would go to drug houses at 14 years old with an unloaded 12 gauge and unloaded. Yeah.
He's like, son, here you go.
Yeah. It was just a racket to scare him out, but kind of a unique childhood. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, infantry unit leader, combat instructor, lots of trips to Iraq and Afghanistan. But then I was retired and realized the importance of course, taking care of the people around me. Obviously, first and foremost, my own family, but neighbors, community, church. And so I really delved even more deeply. Obviously I had a firearms and combat background, but that's different from a household defense background. And so I just started, I served as a USCCI, U.S. Concealed Carry Association instructor, and started doing concealed carry classes, and that morphed into home defense and all kinds of things. So, literally decades of experience around firearms, security, from the macro level of tens of thousands of Marines and literal gunships at my command, down through here's a husband and wife, and I want to train them to protect their family.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think we were talking before I hit record, and when it comes to home defense, sometimes I think husbands in particular, they think of the subject and they think, yeah, I'm totally ready. I carry every day. I train with my firearm. We've got gun available in the home, that we're careful with kids. We do all the right things there. So we're set. I know what to do when there's a bump in the night and I'm going to wake up. I'm going to get my $3,000 AR pistol set up that I've meticulously crafted, and I've done Keanu Reeves training at the range. And I think what you'll find through this episode, though, is that while that is good, not knocking that at all, man, there's so much to think about. And when you started sending me what you were thinking through in terms of what to talk about on this subject, I realized, yes, it is good that we had you on, because I'm taking notes. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great point. I haven't done that at all. We've got to think about this aspect of home security. So thanks again for coming on. I think this is going to be helpful. Why don't we jump in and you've got some principles and some, I don't know if they're rules of home defense or what you might call them, theses. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So I just outlined 5 things that I would really like to talk about. And of course there are some subpoints here. And then I actually wrote this fairly equally spread between a male and female audience, but it might be even more weighted towards a female listenership, simply because, as we'll talk about here with a few statistics, most break-ins happen in the afternoon between noon and 3.
Wow.
It's not a bump in the night. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's the middle of the day when they know the husband's gone, the big kids are at school, and it's just mom home alone with the kids. And so, we'll get pretty practical here, but I do have five things I wanted to talk about. And the first is, the first time an event happens, regardless what that event is, you don't want that to be the first time that you're thinking about it. That's not the time to put together a plan. The plan should be beforehand. And I had an old captain in the Marines who used to say a plan is just something to deviate from, but it's still necessary as a foundation to jump from. So
that's good.
So obviously we want to have some awareness and some plans and think about things before they actually take place. So that would be the first principle. The second is a household is more robust than modern day Americans have a tendency to allot to it. It's not just a physical building house with a few members of a family. A household is this resilient thing that should be able to withstand the storm. And so it should be resilient. It should be sustainable. It's worth fighting for, perhaps dying for. And so, how do we do that? The third point, security is much more than protecting against the threat of violence, right? The bump in the night.
Yeah.
There's fire and animals and so many things that we'll get into. So again, just broadening our awareness so that we don't have merely a depth of knowledge, but a breadth of knowledge about what we can guard against and how to become more resilient. Defense and depth is number 4. And that sounds kind of militaristic, but having several layers of protection between a threat and our family is crucial. And then finally, there is a high likelihood that the man or the husband will not be present during a break-in, violent or not. And so the ultimate authority and responsibility of the household does lie with the husband. And so you have this obligation to equip your family, prepare your family, make sure that they have the resources, education necessary in order to be successful, particularly when you're not present.
Yeah.
And so those are the 5 things that I'd like to discuss.
Yeah, those are great. There were a few in there that when I read, you texted these to me, and when I read them, I was like, wow. Especially number 5 really jumped out to me, that there's a high likelihood that I'll be gone. And I was picturing, like you said, older kids in school. I'm here pastoring and, working, and Lexy's home with a baby and a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old girl. I'm going, okay, that's a soft target to an evil person. So that was really challenging to me just off the cuff here. But yeah, let's walk through these and unpack them for the listeners.
Sure. Yeah. So what I would hate to have happen after the end of this episode is to just instill fear.
Yeah.
And this timidity or even a sense of despair and hopelessness in a wife with a few young kids at home who says, oh my goodness, I'm absolutely vulnerable and there's nothing I can do about it. I want to actually equip people to be successful. And so regardless of what I've taught, whether it's theology, home defense, actual combat, or anything, the very first step is usually education and creating an awareness of a threat or a problem or a situation. And so that's what I'll lead with here. And so the first time an event happens, right? The first time a 16-year-old is trying to break into your house to steal something. The first time a creepy 40-year-old guy who's literally double your body weight starts kicking in on your door, that's not when you want to say, oh my goodness, what do I do?
I'll text my husband. What should I do?
Right.
No.
Right. And you'll see, when seconds count, cops are just minutes away.
Yeah.
Several of my dear friends are police officers. I've even trained SWAT teams. But to be frank, you need to rely on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You really shouldn't be trusting in the government to be there in 30 seconds when a guy's banging on your door. And so what is your plan? What is your plan for, and I'll give a few scenarios here. What do you do when you see a man walking around your yard? Maybe the kids are in the backyard and you look out the window as you're making lunch for your children and you see a stranger walking about your yard. And perhaps he's not, this stereotypical creepy, threatening looking guy. Yeah. Just kind of a regular looking guy. What do you do? What do you do? Are you screaming at your children to get in the house? Or are you going to do what most women do, which is the wrong thing, which is to be more afraid of offering offense, even though all of the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up and your gut is telling you, I should do something about this. Over 80%, 82% of violent crimes against women, the woman was like, yeah, I should respond. I should be proactive. I should run away now. I should get my kids. And they don't, literally out of just a fear of offending someone. And so it's more important that they don't offer offense to this rapist or to this abusive or murderous individual in their mind than actually saving their family or saving their own life.
They're thinking, what if he's the utility worker?
Right.
And I'm so going to be so embarrassed and I'm going to offend him. And
right.
Well, who cares? Because maybe he is that, but what if he's actually trying to figure out the easiest way to get in your house? What if he's thinking about, could I take one of these kids without anybody noticing?
Right. And in recent years, we live here in Utah, and there's actually a pretty large population of door-to-door solicitors. A lot of times it's returned missionaries, Mormon missionaries who come back. They're used to banging on doors, and so they're selling you solar, or they're canvassing for candidates and all of this. Well, people know that around here especially, and so that's what they'll do is they'll pretend they're trying to sell you solar, but they don't even have a name badge or they have some jinky-looking uniform. They're actually just canvassing your house to see how easy of a target you are. And so, we need to think through, what do I do when I see someone in my yard? What is the plan when somebody starts kicking on my door? And it's violent. It's not like a little kid knocking, or even if a kid, one of your children's locked out and they start kicking your door. When a grown man is attempting to gain access to your house, it sounds violent. It's hyper aggressive. It instantly, after just one kick, raises your heart rate. And after 3 kicks, it's less than 3 or 4 seconds in, you already feel like you're in the middle of a fight and you're scrambling to grab your kids. So some of the things that we want to think through are, is the door locked? So super simple, to the point where if I have children from 0 to 14 years old right now, and my older kids I trust to go, for an hour and a half, no cell phone, right? The way I was raised, I was outside for like 8 hours.
Yeah, same. Hey, Mom, I'll be back
for dinner.
Lunch when I'm hungry or run out of money.
But I frequently lock my older children out of the house. And that's because the inside of my house is vulnerable. I want to protect that. And when my big kids come back, they know to knock on the door or to, we do have a Ring doorbell so I can see them. But obviously I will let them in right away. But we don't want just a wide open front door, particularly when you understand that 52% of all burglaries, 52% of them literally walk through the front door, 38% walk through the back door.
Wow.
So, we're humans. We're not Santa Claus that magics our way into a building.
Yeah.
People use doors. And then the third most common is a first-story window. So right off the bat, your plan should be to have a little bit of defense in a passive way, if you will.
Yeah.
And just make sure your door's closed, make sure it's locked. If you still want to be able to hear the kids, you can always put a security door, and that way the door can be open. You can see your children, hear your children. But a bad guy couldn't just walk right in the middle of your house and all of a sudden he's literally in 5 seconds standing in the middle of your living room.
Do you think so? Housewife, a lot of our listeners are homemakers. Doorbell rings in the middle of the day. Should she be answering the door? What should the plan be there?
Yeah. So again, gaining access right through the front door. It's completely common for burglars and as well as violent criminals to just literally knock on your door at 1:00 in the afternoon. And if you don't have any way of seeing through your door, right, you don't have a video doorbell or even a peephole.
Yeah.
All you can do is yell through the door, which usually won't always go great.
Who are you? Yeah. I'm a good guy. I'm from FedEx.
Yeah. So you want to have some sort of visual and preferably auditory way to communicate with somebody on the other side of your front door. So when I bought my house, it didn't have a peephole. $15 on Amazon and a simple drill.
Yeah.
And now I have a peephole right in the middle of my door. So my wife, my children can see. And you can even be a little, you might think it's silly, but buy 2 of them and put one 4 feet off the ground so your small children can look out the door.
That's good.
It's not a
taking notes here.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to have a little, peephole with a cover over it. You know, buy one with a cover so they can't look back, because you could actually put up from the outside. You can put your cell phone up on camera mode and look into someone's peephole and see inside of their house.
Oh,
so buy a peephole with a cover.
That's good,
right? And by the way, some of the things I'm mentioning, we can put it, on a website or something so you can see these actual products and what they might look like. But a video camera. There's some distrust for having video inside of the house and so forth. But a lot of times a video doorbell is fine because it's outside your house. It's not spying on your family. It's usually looking at people coming from the outside. And so even if you don't want a bunch of cameras inside the house, I would still recommend, a video doorbell or something like that on the outside. You can go old school and just have a window. You have a window next to the door where you can see somebody and talk. The old mail slot, sometimes you could even talk through that, just lift it up while you speak and they can hear you. But the point is you want to create some sort of awareness. Yeah. You do not want to just open your door to a stranger. And again, this is actually really weird. This is recent. In the last 100, 150 years in Western civilization where we do this, historically, you would have servants, or if you weren't wealthy, you generally had enough land where you could tell someone was coming onto your property, a few acres of land because you're on a farm or in a rural area. And so in general, we always had an awareness. The goose would start honking. The dogs would start barking. Yeah. But now we're completely isolated inside of our modern day houses with our white picket fence or vinyl fence. And so we just have no awareness outside of our homes. And so it's important to gain some of that situational awareness.
Yeah. So your first point, you don't want the first time, you don't want to be the guy who you develop a great security plan right after a violent robbery of your home occurs. Yeah. You want to make sure. So maybe from this first point, husbands, if you're a homemaker, maybe say to your husband, hey, let's sit down, listen to this episode, go through some resources, address these big areas, fire, daytime, nighttime, depth of defense, some of the things that we'll talk about in the episode. Sit down and start making a plan.
Yeah, you want to talk through it with your spouse. You definitely want to talk through it with your kids, age appropriate, right? Yeah. And that's one of the points I have on here is the way that you would react to a bad guy kicking in your door is going to look radically different if you have a newborn 2 and 5-year-old as opposed to a 17-year-old boy, cornbread Nebraska husky kind of a guy, and a 15-year-old daughter who's competent and has situational awareness and has been talked to about sex and the dangers of being alone with a man and so forth. You're going to act very differently with two or three teenage children who are competent and know to avoid some danger and how to respond even to a threat of danger as opposed to a trusting 2-year-old who thinks this is just mommy's friend.
Yep.
And so that's a consideration, and we'll actually talk through that a little more in depth later. But good deal. What do you do with a baby? And I tell dads this when I teach the concealed carry and home defense class. It's like, you think you're John Wick until you realize that your 3-year-old is in the bedroom right next to the front door, and you can't just button up in your house. You actually do need to go do some room clearing because you don't want to leave your 3-year-old by the front door.
Right.
So this is why historically, houses used to have bedrooms on the second floor. It was literally just to buy you space in case someone was to kick in the front door.
That was actually part of the thinking when we built our house, and I drew the floor plan and put all the kids upstairs. And put all the kids upstairs, and then I'm downstairs. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you any more about my house. But
barbed wire.
But I was thinking about firing lanes and access, and it was just how depth of space and where someone breaks in or fire and that sort of thing. So that's a good point.
And so a few other things to consider. Where are your keys? people have talked about this in the past, but it's actually helpful. If you keep your keys near your bed late at night, let's say, which seems odd, most people will hang them by the garage door or something.
Yeah.
It actually adds another alarm system, because now when you hear a bump in the night, you just hit the alarm on your keys and your car alarm starts going off, the panic button. And so again, criminals don't like, whether it's a 16-year-old burglar making a poor life choice or a sadistic evil man trying to murder your whole family.
Yeah.
No one likes attention drawn to them.
Yep.
And so one of your greatest assets is, how do I draw attention to this? And so when we talk about security in depth, we'll do this. But having noise, having lights, having noisy or nosy neighbors who say, what is going on next door?
Yep.
That's actually a huge blessing.
Huge blessing.
So I would rather have a nosy neighbor than an isolated hermit who opens the garage, pulls in, closes the garage, and I never see them.
We have a neighbor, older LDS gentleman and his wife. And our smoke alarm, whenever I'm making a steak in the house, of course, the smoke alarms are blazing. I mean, it's like, and I'm turning them off and then they come back on. But he's over. He comes and he's separated. There's a little duplex and then him. I mean, he heard that it didn't go off and he came over and he looked, he's like, hey, are you guys okay? And that really, I mean, that's a huge blessing. Yeah. We think he'll notice if our car alarm goes off at 2 a.m., he won't roll back over and go,
right.
Oh, it's fine. He's going to come and check.
Yeah. As an aside, I think somebody could make a killing if they were able to set a fajitas setting
Seriously.
on smoke alarms and sell
just
those.
Give us a fajita setting. 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Or be able to like detect, is this smoke created by red meat?
Right.
Or by, sheetrock and
Yeah, drywall dust.
Electrical fire.
And so to kind of summarize this first point, you do want to have a plan. And, perhaps at another time or in another way, we could give some very, very practical step-by-steps. And we'll actually cover some of it when we talk about like defense in depth here.
Yeah.
During point number 3. But you want to have a plan. You don't want to, what if this to death?
Mm-hmm.
And again, have this spirit of timidity and fear and hopelessness. But you don't want to just be naive.
Yeah.
And have absolutely no preparedness whatsoever and think you're just going to yell for the kids and they'll run inside and we'll close the doors and everything's fine. On average, most grown men can kick in a front door on a standard modern day house with 3 kicks.
Wow.
3 kicks is all it takes. And so we'll talk about how to defeat that soon. But your house, I don't want to scare you, but I want you to be aware your house is generally far less secure than you might suspect.
Mm.
And so we want to have a plan beforehand.
Yeah.
Number 2, a household is more robust than just a simple concept of a house, a building, a structure made out of 2x6s, 2x4s, and drywall, and your family. It's a household. And even that name, it's something that reminds you of like a keep, a castle, household. Mm. The hold is where that term comes from. And so it should be resilient. It should be sustainable, even if made with modern building practices and 2x4s, 2x6s, and drywall. I'm not telling you to turn your house into a literal fortress and put up a bunch of barbed wire in your yard. Nothing like that.
Machine gun nest. Pointed at the front door. And, and that's a diversion.
Yes.
That's a dummy. The real machine gun, that's the second floor window.
But it's imperative to think through as a man, as a woman, what is worth fighting for? What is worth giving my life for and selling it dearly? Mm. When I teach concealed carry, one of the principles that I have to teach, because it's really a legality as well, is would you jump into a shark tank to save this thing if it fell overboard? If the answer is no, then you shouldn't be willing to take someone's life. And so as an example, if we're on a ship and your car falls into the water, would you jump in after your car or just let it go? And most people say, I'm going to let it go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if somebody were stealing your car at gunpoint, you should just let them take your car.
Yeah. Now, unless they make you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take the car.
Yeah. But if my 2-year-old is in the car seat in the car and it fell overboard, of course I would jump in. Same concept, right? So the kind of a principle, it's a generic principle that you can use is if this thing were to fall into a shark-infested water, would I jump in after it? If the answer is no, then you wouldn't want to take someone's life over it. So if a bad guy, picks up your flowers and runs off with a flower pot. Of course, you're not going to shoot him, right? That's wrong. Call the cops if you want. But you don't need to zero in on that guy. But if somebody's going to harm your family, if somebody's taking something that is absolutely critical to the survival of your family, and I don't mean a car that you use for business, there's insurance for that, right? But, your son's inhaler, and it's the only one you've got, and he's going to die if you don't get it back. That's something to fight for, maybe not take a life over. But so you really have to kind of think through this principle of what is worth fighting for, what would be worth even taking a life, right? Because even the bad guy, he's just us without self-restraint. We're all wicked, and so he's still an image bearer of God, and it's with a very heavy heart, heavy hand that you would take a life in the first place. As somebody who's done that dozens of times, it's not a light thing.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to just think, well, this is a criminal and he's going to hurt my kids, so of course I'll take his life. Yeah, at the end of the day, that might be what happens, but there should still be a severe gravitas and this heaviness to even thinking in those terms. And so again, point one coming back into play, we need to think through some of this before it happens.
Yeah. So much of that has to be having a plan, because when you're, I know you taught a men's class some time ago about the different levels of awareness and things like that. And just, if it's not a knee-jerk response for you when the carjacking happens, if you haven't thought through that scenario where you're getting in the car, and I think this is common for men. I don't think women do this. When I get in a car, I'm thinking, when I pull up at a stop sign, I'm always aware who's around me. Can I steer out? Am I going down a narrow bridge? Could someone stop a car and someone behind and coordinate? And men think about this all the time, and knowing what would I do? Okay, if no one's in the car, if it's just me, I'm going to try to get out. I'm going to take the car, whatever, take all my stuff, take my wallet. If my 2-year-old's in it, if my wife's there, it's a different thing. But I don't want to have to think it through for the first time. Right. And go, what is a pull my gun scenario versus a not pull my gun scenario? What's a call the police and make a report versus chase the guy down scenario? Right. You got to know beforehand. Otherwise, not only might you have a loss, but you actually might end up making a really foolish decision. Right.
Yeah, you can actually do more harm to yourself if you haven't thought through some of these things. You can make the quote unquote the wrong decision and cause even greater harm to your household.
Yeah. You being in prison would be a bad thing.
Right. And I tell people all the time, murder and manslaughter, those are not light things.
Yeah.
And so, Brian, I've sat in on hundreds and hundreds of your sermons over the years. Love you very much, served with you. And I can tell you that there's never been a single Sunday where I haven't at some point let my mind water for 30 seconds and said, what if a bad guy came?
Yeah.
Like, it's just part of being a man, I think, is even when you're on fire with a sermon, I'm still like, I bet I can take that shot.
It's funny because there's almost never been a sermon where mid-sermon I don't think, is that door to my left behind me closed? Someone could have a clear firing line at me from behind. And I know, and then I go, the security team's thinking about it. Josh was thinking about it. I'm fine. I'm good.
But asking ourselves this question again, thinking through it, what's worth fighting for? What's worth dying for? A little less severe than that, what's worth spending money on? Right? I don't need to fight for this, but is it worth it to budget a little bit of money for 3 months and improve a few things, which we'll talk about in point 3 here, or point 4, but improve, let's buy a Ring doorbell. Yeah. Let's buy a couple deadbolts. Let's put a few alarms on a couple first-story windows. Let's plant a prickly pear hedge by the main window near our kids' room. Just, if it's worth fighting or dying for, then certainly it would be worth spending a little bit of time, money, effort, resources on. Yeah. And so I would just exhort the listeners to consider, if I'm willing to spend, I tell men this all the time when I do a concealed carry class. If you're going to spend $700 on a gun, please don't go spend $15 on a holster. It's piece of crap made in China going to fall apart, right? Spend a little money on a good holster. Same concept here. If the household has already had usually hundreds of thousands of dollars poured into it with the actual physical house, all of the household goods, education of children, family, all of this, and you're telling me you're going to rely on a $5 device to, $5 lock.
I don't know if I can do the peephole this month. That was $15.99 on Amazon.
We're not trying to turn it into Fort Knox, but let's spend a few dollars. Let's buy a fire extinguisher for the kitchen for $20.
So true. That was this is shameful. This year was the first time I realized Because again, I didn't do principle 1.
Right.
We had a stove fire, something Lexi was cooking. And I was like, I'm the worst husband. I don't even have a fire extinguisher here that they know how to use.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, right then, remedy it.
Yeah.
Order it, get it there. And it's so true, though. It's easy to overlook, and then you just go. And it's also easy to think. I think this may be the most practical aspect of this point is that when you think about what would you give your life for, of course, every mother that's listening, every father's like, I would gladly lay down my life for my children. I would. If a carjacker is trying to take my 2-year-old, every single mom listening, I know would claw, bite, kick, yell, scream, shoot, stab, whatever. Yeah. Lay her life down for that kid. But a lot of the time when it comes to thinking ahead and budgeting, we balk all of a sudden. We're like, oh, but I can't spend, maybe it's a couple $100s to make these key improvements. You go, I bet you could if you really thought about the priority.
And that's what it is. It's an issue of priority. Most of the time when something terrible happens, crime-related, the first thought that goes through a person's head is, this can't be happening. Mm-hmm. Well, the reason they think that is because they haven't planned for it. Yeah. And they're saying, well, I haven't planned for this, so obviously it can't be happening. But that's why people say, this can't be happening to me. This must not be happening. They kind of divorce from reality briefly. And it's because they've not planned through it. Yeah. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum where there's some like weirdo guy who's like hoping for a zombie apocalypse. He's like, oh, please let this happen. Yeah. I hope somebody tries to carjack me because he's got 6 guns in the car and he's just waiting for it.
And some of those guys then go join like law enforcement and become the most annoying police officers because they're just like looking to rumble everywhere they go. They're trying to pick a fight. Guy, calm down. Bring it down. You're here. I need you down here.
So yeah, thinking through these things, is why we're talking about it. But a household, what would you fight for? What would you die for? What are you willing to spend a couple $100 or $1,000 on? And yeah, money goes quick and it's hard earned. I understand that. Yeah. But I've told people this too, again, with like a concealed carry class. Don't go buy a $200 piece of junk gun that you know is unreliable because if your child's life depended on it after the fact and your gun malfunctioned, let's say, you would hate to have that on your conscience that oh man, my child's life wasn't worth a $500 gun. It was just worth $200. And so same concept here. You don't have to buy the best of everything, but let's prioritize this. Let's put some resources towards it. Yep. Point 3, security involves much more than just this simple threat of violence or even like a burglary, right? We brought it up just a minute ago, fire. Yeah. A child has not died in a government school since the 1950s or 60s. There have been fires, of course, but a child has not lost their life. Why? Because we have fire alarms, fire extinguishers, fire drills, fire signs, exit signs. Like every time you go into a government building, a school, look at all the precautions we take for fire. Now, how many children have lost their lives to a school shooting? Why? Because we have next to no precautions for that. Right.
And we have stupid policies that basically make them.
Right. And so, there's a few things that are in place, and we've thought about it with the more higher prevalence of school shootings and such. But the reason I bring this up is because there hasn't been a death because we've been so proactive. We've put resources, we've put training, we've put a high priority on ensuring that another child would never die in a fire. And so we're okay with that in a government building or at Walmart, right? We see fire extinguishers and signs. But in our own household, which is the number one cause of death in a household, it's fires and falling from a ladder.
Wow. So not sexy things to prepare for. You don't see guys doing tactical drills with fire extinguishers, running around like with their tactical gear on, and they've got like 3 small fire extinguishers strapped to their thigh and like a back mounted one, and they're just right. It's like, but to your point,
yeah, but like
it'd be worth spending. That's actually a more likely scenario,
far more likely,
way more likely.
Look at the data. Yeah, just look at the data briefly, and so. I actually keep a fire extinguisher in each one of my vehicles, my household vehicle, like my car, my truck,
that's good.
My wife's van. Like we have fire extinguishers there, so we can put out a fire in the vehicle or if somebody else needed some help. Yeah. But of course, we have a fire extinguisher in our kitchen. It's the number one cause of death, fire in a household and falling from ladders. Why would I not? Yeah. Why would I not spend $20 on Amazon for a fire extinguisher in the kitchen? Yeah. And here's why. Because we didn't think about it.
Yeah. Most people would. They go, oh, yeah, duh.
Yeah, but most people don't.
They don't think about it.
I bet if I were to honestly ask every viewer here, I bet far less than a quarter of them have a fire extinguisher.
A year ago, I would have been one of those idiots.
Right.
It's like,
right.
But one thing that I think is, on this planning ahead point and thinking this through, it's like most people, I think, overestimate their preparedness because, and I'm one of these people, because they think in terms of principles and never then give specific scenarios where they go, oh yeah, I'm prepared because I know how to handle my sidearm, whatever.
Yeah.
But then think, what will specific scenario? What will I do? What will my wife do when I'm gone, when the fajitas catch on fire? What is she going to do? Well, our house might burn down. I think she'd probably get all the kids out,
Sure.
But we'd probably,
it's probably going to burn.
House would burn down,
or
significant fire damage, and a $20 Amazon purchase would
fix
fix it
in 30 seconds. Same thing with the violent side, and we'll come back to fires in a moment. But everyone trains. How do they train? Standing, facing the target, clearly aware of the target, hand already on the shirt, ready to lift it up to get access to the gun. When in reality, you're a 135-pound housewife, and you're holding a baby on a hip and a car seat in the other, and a man comes up and grabs you by the throat from behind while you're busy loading children and trying to get them buckled into their car seat. No, you're completely unprepared. You're completely unaware of that bad guy. And so, again, gaining some awareness of where's the likelihood of the threat going to come from. They're not going to stand in the middle of the street, Old West style, and have a quick draw competition.
Play the little beep, beep,
right.
boo, boo, boo.
Right.
Jerry
Jerry Michalek,
Michalek, So two in the chest, one in the head, under a second. I think so. There's a lot of listeners here that would agree with us that government regulation has wildly overrun the banks. Where it's like everywhere you go, there's 15 inspectors trying to get you to say, oh, did your wiring everything? And a lot of us rightly say the government's it's overrun its banks, but you can't say that if the reason they've overrun their banks is because men and women, we're supposed to be taking responsibility.
Advocated.
We shouldn't need the government to come in and say, hey, because you love your neighbor, you shouldn't want to start a fire that burns the whole neighborhood down. Or, because you love your neighbor, you want to be prepared to help, like carrying a fire extinguisher in your car is a great example of this. You come along, crash, and there's a fire and someone's trapped in a vehicle or they're on fire. It's simple things like that where when Christians take the proactive, I'm going to not wait for a government regulator to show up. I'm going to make sure that my principles of loving my neighbor are alive in the way that I think about all of these more than simple threat of violence scenarios that are very common. I think that's really a really good rebuke for us to think through. We complain about the government being a nanny state. Well, they really shouldn't, but we really should be taking responsibility for ourselves.
If you don't want to be treated like a child, don't act like a child. Like, take some responsibility for these things. And so, and getting really practical, right? So when I do firearms training, I'll have people lay on the ground, right? Like a big guy has already overpowered you probably, and you're already on the ground. So you need to learn how to draw a gun from laying on the ground with a 200-pound man on top of you. You need to practice that. But more likely would be a fire. And so before we started the episode, I was talking to you about doing fire drills. So with my children, about once a year, I run a household fire drill. And you have to train the way you fight because you'll fight the way you train. So I don't do any like notional or theoretical. We're going to get really, really practical. We're going to actually physically do each one of these steps. And so I have my children lay in their beds. I don't make them get under the covers, but they actually do have to lay in their beds. And then I reach up and I hit the fire alarm in the house so they all hear it. So now they know what it sounds like. They know the exact sound our fire alarms make. And then obviously I've talked through what they need to do, but they get out, they crawl, they feel the handle of their doorknob to see if it's hot. If it's not, they open. I'm thinking of like The Office right now with
Dwight.
With Michael.
Today's smoking's gonna save lives.
And as silly as that is, there's actually like some validity to doing that, and we don't need to start a fire in our house. But like, hit the smoke alarms, have your kids crawl, let them feel, do these things. When I was a kid, we used to have firefighters who would come to the school and like do this, stop, drop, and roll, and we would all roll around with our face covered with our hands. But do this with your house. Again, don't let the government do it. You do it. One of the things I learned by practically doing this is that my daughter was capable. She was like 7 at the time, and she was capable of opening her window, which some kids are not, right? A 4-year-old might not know how to open your window or have the strength to do it.
Yep.
But she could open the window. She knew to push out the screen, just push hard and it'll fall out. But she was not able, because she lives in the basement, her room's in the basement, she was not able to lift the window well cover, because I have like rebar window well covers so you don't fall through when you're outside.
Yeah.
And they weigh like 70 or 80 pounds. And she wasn't strong enough to move that. And so now I know, okay, several years ago, my daughter could escape her bedroom, but not really. She's trapped in a window well.
Yep.
And so I'm going to have to run around the back of the house, go to her window well, move that grate for her, and lift her out.
Yeah.
And so again, if you have a baby, you have a 2-year-old versus a 17-year-old, this is going to look different. But that's why we've got to think through it. And that's also why you have to practically do this. Because just talking to my daughter saying, okay, if there's a fire, just climb out the window. Yeah, but I would never have known that she couldn't lift that grate. It wouldn't have crossed my mind if I hadn't seen her, A, barely able to tiptoe reach it, but B, struggling with moving this heavy thing. So yeah, security includes more than just the violence. We need to look at some of these threats. Online threats. I won't spend very much time here, but my goodness, like the LGBTQ+++, minor attracted persons, that whole thing. Who are they targeting? I recently spoke with my sister-in-law. She's like, there's always like a gay commercial, a transgender commercial, and all these kids programs. Yeah. I said, well, yeah, that's their target audience. Yeah. That's where they're spending 90% of their dollars. Oh, man. Is on kids. And so even if you're watching like a quote unquote good show on YouTube, like we don't let our kids watch. There's a show called Dude Perfect. It's a bunch of guys doing trick shots and stuff. They're actually Christians out of Texas. Yeah. And it's a great show. It's fine for a young boy, like 12-year-old boys think it's awesome. But guess what? Every 7 minutes, there's an advertisement that's radically inappropriate. And so you can't even allow, a good show on YouTube or Amazon to be unsupervised. So that's a part of maintaining a resilient household is ensuring that you're monitoring and you're aware of what's being consumed inside of your household. Yeah.
Yeah, so true. Even just the tactic of so, I mean, think about the way that serial killers sometimes would use tactics of disarming somebody or basically getting them to do the victim to do 90% of the work, come with them, willingly go to their house, that kind of thing. Well, the internet is like a portal for anybody with an internet connected device to invite, groom, work your children or whoever to try and get them. Even your people that I think parents sometimes they go, oh, I know my 12-year-old daughter. She's smart. We've talked about this kind of stuff. She's ready. She's having a lot of unmonitored internet access now. Well, you know what? 12-year-olds have really poor judgment. 14-year-olds, tremendously poor judgment. And we forget, I think, as adults sometimes to think back and go, oh my word, I would have been the easiest person to lure, or they've done those drills I've seen with where all set up, everybody knows it's going to happen except the kid. Yeah, the mom even knows a guy's going to come up, a stranger to the park. He's going to say, "Hey, can you come get in my van?" To like 5, 6, 7-year-olds. Yeah, and no resistance. They just literally got in the van. Yeah, I mean, I've seen so many drills like this. Yeah, where you've had a few conversations or one or two and you think we're good. Yeah. They'll remember.
Here's how bad it is. There's a guy on YouTube who does social experiments and he, with parents' permission, like nothing crazy here, he sets up, he pretends he's like a 12-year-old boy or 14-year-old boy and he's talking to their 12-year-old daughter online through like Pokemon Go, right? Oh, yeah. Remember, like a lot of these video games have chat.
Oh, they have chat function.
World of Warcraft. All these things have like chat where you can talk with other humans and they might pose as a teenage boy or something. Yeah. And reality, he's a 40-year-old guy who he's not actually a creepy guy, but he's
pretending to be
creepy guy, right? Yeah. And so he actually kidnaps this 12-year-old girl. Parents are right there. Yeah. And he like straight up kidnaps her in the van, the whole creepy style 1980s movie. Okay. Wow. So that happens, lesson learned, right? No. Fast forward a year and a half. He goes back to that same family and says, surely she learned her lesson. She's literally been kidnapped, right? She's been thrown into a van and hogtied. Yeah. And a year and a half later, he goes back to the same family, to the same daughter, and he basically does the same thing and she falls for it a second time. No. She again gets into a creepy guy's van. Thinking,
that is crazy.
Yeah, thinking she's going to like a party.
But yeah. So parents, you gotta think beyond the violent threat.
Yes.
You can't just, and you've got to think about holistic security of the house.
One of the things I teach my children in particular, and I exhort all parents to do this, is an adult should never ask a child for help. So I tell my kids, if a man or a woman, a lot of times it's a nice looking lady who's the bait because she seems more trustworthy. They know not to talk to a creepy guy. But like drug dealers and so forth will actually hire, a 40-year-old mom looking lady to come and say, "Oh, can you help me find my puppy?" Well, the answer is no, and red flags and sirens and bells and whistles should be going off in your brain.
Yeah.
An adult should never, ever, ever ask a child for help. And so I tell my kids, if a grown-up asks you for help, you literally run to like a trustworthy adult.
Yep.
And you get away. My daughter, kind of on a lighter note, years ago, she was like 5, and I talked to her about stranger danger. And I got a call saying, "Hey, did you talk to Killian about stranger danger?" And I was like, yeah, I did. She goes, "I think she missed the message." I said, "Why?" She goes, she came up to me and she goes, "Mom, guess what? Dad said, if you go with a stranger in their car, they give you candy." Like, that's what she took away. She's like, "Yes, hop in this van because there's candy in there."
I'm going. So don't get in the van. No. Well, they've got candy.
Yeah. She's like, "Well, strangers give you candy."
No. So if I come home, you give me candy?
Right.
Well, no, that's not the point. That's
so even
funny.
if you feel like you've talked with your children prepared, you still have that responsibility to supervise your children.
You are their judgment.
Yes.
Like, that's the point, is that as a parent, when people are in your charge, your goal is to be their first and second and third line of judgment before it gets to theirs. You want to train their judgment. We want our kids to grow in judicial maturity and be able to make self-controlled, wise decisions as they grow into adults. But we have to be careful, I think, not to overestimate, especially as our children start to get into that age range where they're helpful around the house now. They do have wisdom and they're growing in their knowledge in some areas. That 10-year-old girl, a 10-year-old girl is tremendously helpful around the house.
Oh, yeah.
But a 10-year-old girl has terrible judgment and doesn't understand the dangers of the world.
Sure.
Really at all, even if you talk to them. So our job as husbands and as, moms and dads is to be first, second, third line, having multiple tiers of defense.
Absolutely. And so another area to consider when we're talking about these threats and being secure would be something like insurance. And maybe you weren't planning on me discussing this, and we don't have to go in depth, but
That's, I think, worth mentioning.
Yeah, take a look at your insurance. We're talking about building a resilient household that is safe from harm. One of the greatest harms when I do concealed carry is, you shoot a guy and perhaps you're justified, but you are automatically a suspect to murder. Even if camera evidence and witness statements are all saying, no, he absolutely did in self-defense. Well, you just shot a guy and there's blood on the floor and a couple hot cases sitting on the ground. The cops aren't going to show up and be like, "Oh my goodness, this must have been traumatic for you. What happened?"
And you said, "I did it."
And you're like, "Yeah, I shot this."
I shot him. Here's the gun.
They're going to come in like a SWAT team. They're going to throw you on the ground, probably more violently than you wish they would, and handcuff you more tightly than you think they should. And that's fine. That's part of it, right? Well, same concept. Do you have concealed carry insurance? Do you have a strong enough fire insurance? Do you have, if you run a business and all of these things are things that we should consider when it comes to the security of our household.
Yeah.
One thing I tell people all the time, I have an LLC. I run my own business, and people will recognize that I'm protected from my business, but my business is not protected from me. And so, if you're an LLC, somebody can't come and drain my bank account. They can sue the business, but not me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go the other way, right? My business is not protected from me. So if I do something silly, somebody can sue my business, sort of a thing. And so just thinking through some of these concepts of how secure are we truly?
Yeah.
How secure am I? If I have friends of my children coming over and one of them breaks their leg on the trampoline, which happened to me 4 years ago, will my insurance cover that?
Yeah.
When my son, who at the time was like 11, was just jumping with a friend, we had a sprinkler on the trampoline, it was slippery, and he landed right on and broke the growth plate of the neighbor boy 2 houses down who was like 6. Okay. Well, that's a $70,000 bill.
Oof.
That's a big hit. Like, that's a year's income or more for many Americans.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Are we prepared? Are we protected against nothing, well, I guess violent, but nothing
Little boys are
taking
violent.
place. Yeah.
In everything they do it violently. They eat violently. They nap violently. They play violently. They're just violent. That's
Yeah,
just
my
how it is.
2-year-old snores like a grown
They
man.
snore violently. Yeah, so true.
Right. And so are we protected against threats that are not merely just violence? I know you've done an episode relating to this where we talk about medical, but what about like traumatic medical? Again, when seconds count, the government's only minutes away. Here in Utah, the average response time is 18 minutes to a violent crime, 28 minutes for a nonviolent crime. Before a cop shows up at your door, before EMTs show up, it's like 9 minutes if it's life-threatening. But the point is, when you only have 1 minute to stop an arterial bleed, do you have tourniquets, moms?
Yeah.
Not just dads who've done tactical training, but mom.
Yep.
When one of your kids falls out of a tree and they break their leg and it's actually a compound fracture that severs an artery, which absolutely happens. It absolutely happens. Do you know how to apply a $12 tourniquet that you bought on Amazon? Can you do that?
Yep.
Or is it like buried all the way up in a closet where you don't have access?
Do you know where it is?
Right.
Yep. At all times.
Have you done it a few times?
Yep.
Have you practiced this 30 or 40 times, once a year on a day? These are important, right? I appreciate, drinking green tea for your health, but do you know how to actually stop? Again, it doesn't have to be violence. It doesn't have to be a gunshot to a child, but do you know how to fix a compound fracture until 911 shows up?
Stabilize.
Right.
Stop a bleed, deal with a obstructed airway.
Yeah.
These kinds of seconds count, emergency medical, truly emergency. Do you know how to do CPR on infant to an adult?
Yeah.
Like how these sorts of things should be in the wheelhouse of every parent, male or female.
Yeah.
Everybody caring for children, teenagers, as they're doing like babysitting things in churches, even churches, thinking about those sorts of scenarios. They make the de-choking devices and things that, and so these are important things. When you think of a household, the church is a household of households. Your house is a household. Your business is an extension of a household in a sense. So all these things, they expose you to liability, but they even just you obviously want to help. You want to be a helpful person.
Right.
So when you're thinking about these things, one of the ways that's helpful, I think, is in terms of a mental framework, is just to think, would I want to be the kind of person that would be competent in these situations? And most people would go, of course I do. Of course I would want to be that person. And then you say, okay, do the next thing. You're not going to become an EMT certified tomorrow.
Right.
Of course, not everyone needs to do that. But can you do the next thing? Can you figure out, can you sign up for the class for your child to be safer around water so they know how to turn their back and float?
Exactly.
Can you sign up for the Stop the Bleed class? Can you just do the next thing? And pretty soon, give it 6 months, a year, 2 years, you will have, you'll look back and you go, oh, I'm a competent, better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Right.
You need to have the range to be able to do it.
Yeah, and you even mentioned, I was going to bring up specifically like the de-choker. It's like a huge syringe with like a mouth and nose cup on the end. And you can buy a children, infant, and adult size. And like, we have that in our house.
Yeah, we have them all over.
Because
now.
it's, I tried it on myself. I test everything on myself.
Yeah.
Holy moly. It feels like you're going to suck your lungs right out of your mouth. Like it's intensely powerful.
Yeah.
If you have a good seal on your face. But like that is, I don't know, it was a few dollars. It was more pricey than I actually thought it should be. But
yeah, it was like $75 for one.
100% worth it if it saves my child's life.
We had choking incidents.
Yeah.
Even at our house on Halloween, we were going trick-or-treating in the neighborhood, right across the street, actually. Little boy, maybe 4, starts choking, full airway obstruction. I mean, he can't make a noise. And it was what astonished me. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything. Someone did. What astonished me was that nobody did anything. They all stopped.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't know what to do until you say, you do this, you do that. I called 911. Someone did then jump in and Heimlich or something, and they cleared the airway, but it took about 30 to 60 seconds, which feels like a year.
Yeah.
And the ambulance actually is right down the street from us, so they have quick response, but it took 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little kid. That could be it.
Yeah, 4 minutes can absolutely be it.
And that was the day that we went home, we got the de-chokers. Because I've been looking at them, and I had been, it was stupid. I was like, they're $75. If I had been able to run across the street to our glove box in our car, pull it out, even, it would have been maybe it wouldn't. Sometimes these things don't work, but it would have been a far higher level of preparedness. Than even just calling 911 or whatever. So,
and again, thinking through young children, you can't give CPR to a 1-year-old the same way you do a 30-year-old.
Yeah, and
so just are you prepared? I'm talking especially to moms right now too. Moms at home on a 1 o'clock. Your kid starts choking. Do you seriously know what to do? Or are you just thinking back to a YouTube video or a movie you saw? Like, have you practiced doing the Heimlich on your husband? Have you practiced doing a 50% Heimlich on your 10-year-old? Do you know how to stop a baby from choking and identify those signs? And so, security is more than just the violent side of life. It's how resilient are we as a household to handle these threats to our longevity, to our health, to our welfare. Okay, number 4, and here's where we can actually get into some nitty-gritty, like real practical steps. Yeah. So defense in depth is critical to survivability. You gave a sermon once where you talked about the Maginot Line, and so if all you have is one line of defense, if someone pokes through that, you're done. Yeah. You have no hope. They're at the heart. They're at the lungs. Yep. And so in the military, we have these concepts called defense in depth where, you put first you have observation for miles. And then you have patrols who are out there to alert you over the radio. And then you have barbed wire. And then you have camouflage, which is a form of defense. And then, of course, you have your own machine guns. The point is there's depth to this. We don't just have one line. Same concept with your household. And again, not just for violence. What do you have for awareness? And so this is where, again, let's get really practical here. Let's have a few cameras. I know many people are hesitant to put cameras inside of the house because they can be hacked or used as evidence. People can spy on you. I mean, there was terrible things several years ago, and I think most companies have fixed this, where like teens or some punk young man was hacking into baby monitors and speaking like a scary demon voice.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Right. And so I understand that, but have a few cameras to give you some awareness, particularly with the front door, with your back door. Floodlights. Have motion detecting floodlights. Absolutely go and buy those. If you don't have those, go buy them. I even have solar powered secondary lights in case power gets cut off. I mean, 2 years ago with all the riots and things like were taking place, some neighborhoods went without power. Yeah. Well, now your camera doesn't work, your lights don't work. And so I even have a couple solar lights. Again, you can buy them on Amazon, like a 4-pack for $30. Yeah. And even if they're crap and they burn out after 2 years, well, every 2 years buy a new set, Yeah. But you want lights because, again, bad guys, whether they're violent murderers or just some 16-year-old who's making a poor life choice, they don't want to be seen. Yeah. They don't want to be heard. You can put alarms on your doors and windows without even hardwiring them into the house and doing a subscription. There's little ones I keep on all my windows that are battery powered. Yep. There's no subscription. If power's cut to the house, it doesn't matter. The alarm will still work. And what that does is it buys you time. Okay, that will probably scare off the 16-year-old. And so they're threat avoided. Yep. The violent criminal, he doesn't care about that alarm, probably. He's going to come in and turn that alarm off as fast as he can, and he's in your house. But what that does, particularly in the middle of the night or something, is it gives me an awareness that this window was opened. Yep. And so now he can't walk literally right up to my bed as I'm sleeping. I now am aware someone's in the house. Yep. The flip side, my kid's trying to get out of the house for some reason. Very, very true. Talking about it's not just threat of violence. Right. It's also the threat of poor judgment from your people. Right. Oh. Or just a curious 2-year-old who gets up. And so, and they can turn off with a simple switch. So it doesn't become like this big hassle. I think the first week, my poor wife set the window alarms off because we open our windows all the time. Oh, yeah, yeah. Like every day, she's like, oh, why do we have these stupid things? And then after a week, she just kind of acclimated. And now she's like, thank goodness that we have these. Yeah. Yep. And because it's helpful. So gain awareness. Other passive things that you can do to protect your household, your actual house, physical house, would be go ahead and plant like a thorny bush near windows. Again, it's not going to stop that hardened criminal from gaining access, but it's going to discourage a curious 15-year-old, 16-year-old. It's going to keep people away a little bit unless they're on drugs or seriously intent on gaining access. Simple things like that. Remove buckets from your garden. Remove wheelbarrows from your garden that people could stand upon to gain access to a window more easily. You want to change your locks. And here's what I mean by that. Not to get too lost here, but most people don't understand how their front door is constructed. that big, strong, bold-looking door to the entrance to your house that you try to make look pretty for guests is actually extremely vulnerable. Most of the time, when your house is constructed and that door is built, it's done with 3/4-inch screws going into a 1/2 to 1 inch thick piece of typically pine, which is a soft, very breakable wood.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you take karate, the boards you break are almost always like pine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why most grown men can kick in a door within 3 kicks, 2 to 3 kicks is all it takes to gain access to a locked front door. They literally kick the door off the hinges, or they'll kick the faceplate, which is like where your knob and your latch are on the door. That's the part that it locks into.
Yeah.
Again, that's only held on there with 3/4-inch screws. So a very simple thing you can do is remove all of the screws from your hinges, of course, one at a time, and replace them with like a 3-inch screw. Because a door frame is constructed with 2 2x4s called a jack stud and a king stud. And that's 4 inches of wood.
Yeah.
That's literally untapped in a literal sense. It's untapped. The screw doesn't reach into that. It's just going into this piece of like trim board. So if you put a 3-inch screw in and replace all of those screws on your hinges, on your lock, on your door, on the knob on your door, you now take an average of 17 kicks before somebody could break in. And 17 kicks is enough to dissuade somebody from continuing to try.
Probably going to give up.
They're going to give up. And certainly, again, think about bang, bang, bang. You're going to have plenty of time to react as opposed to 2 or 3 kicks and they're already in your house.
Yep.
And so simple things like that, right? Replace all of the screws in all of your doors. Put alarms on your windows. Put alarms on your door. Put a deadbolt. Put an actual deadbolt on your doors. Something a lot of people overlook is the garage. If people can gain access to your garage, they generally can gain access to your house. Most people don't let, for us, our big garage door that you drive the car into, you close that, you're in the garage, and then you can walk into a door, which takes us right into our kitchen. Mm-hmm. So if I can gain access to your garage, that means I can gain access to your house because most people won't lock that interior door that goes to the garage. They think the big garage door has gone down, it's closed, so we're secure. They fail to realize that other door allows access into the house. Without scaring folks, it's actually very easy to gain access into your garage door with a simple coat hook. I guarantee you in less than 30 seconds, I could get into anyone's garage.
That's kind of creepy.
That little thing that hangs down in case the power goes out for your garage door opener, if you reach up between the door and the frame and you hook that and you pull it, you now have just gained access to the pull release that unhooks it from, the chain, the garage door opener. And now you can just literally lift up the garage door with your hands the way we used to in the 1950s.
Oh, well, good.
So if you have a garage with a garage door, in 30 seconds, anyone can gain access to that. And if you're like, gosh, why'd you tell? Well, because bad guys already know this.
Yeah, I mean, the internet exists, you guys. It's like the anarchist cookbook back in the day. We all got a copy of it in junior high and, made flammable things. And, I know how to make napalm. I probably don't know how to make napalm, but you do know how to make flammable gel.
And so this goes back to that awareness of, okay, keep your doors closed, keep stuff locked. We lock all of our doors all of the time, and we're not weirdo paranoid. Like, gosh, you've been to our house several times for dinner.
Yeah.
Like,
kids play outside.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine. But lock the door, and it becomes a habit. As soon as my kids come in the house, they lock the door.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, just making your home. The thing, this is kind of sad in a sense because you're saying rob somebody else, but if your home has 2 or 3 signals that say this is a prepared home, a lot of the nuisance robbery, a lot of the nuisance stuff goes away because they'll just look at it. They'll know that they know, like, they've got this thing. They've got the clear security system, camera. Right. Okay, nope, never mind. Moving on.
Yeah, it dissuades them. Most people, like men who assault women, the vast majority, like well over 90%, are looking for a woman who's on her phone.
Yeah.
Or for somebody who has both earbuds in. So in public, only wear one earbud. When you drive, you should only have one anyway to hear, an ambulance coming behind you. But just maintaining some awareness, right? Yeah. Not burying your nose in your phone when you're in public. We call it staying in the yellow. But
they even have that a lot of earpods or whatever have that transparency mode that use microphones to hear what's happening around you and actually transmit it. So you can maintain situational awareness better. I thought that was a really good, that's an actually very practical feature that's starting to hit a lot of headphones now. Because it is, I remember you gave that class. I don't know if you were going to go into it at all, but the different awareness levels very, very key. I'll let you do it.
Yeah.
But that was just, I think about that, Nat, all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I think men particularly, again, do this naturally, but it gives you a label. So anyway.
Well, yeah. And I actually was going to segue right into that in a minute, but don't neglect neighbors too. Neighbors are a great form of security. Everyone thinks their guard dog is going to attack. Most dogs, even if it's like a big dog, if they've not been specifically trained, even like a Great Dane, a lot of times will kind of tuck tail and run behind master who's getting assaulted. It's actually pretty rare. So you can't just count on, having a dog either, although that's a good bark alert. A lot of times you can't count on them for physical security, but having neighbors, having dogs, having floodlights, having motion detectors, having cameras. And the thing is, it's not like this constant going through your mind. It just becomes these habits that you build, locking the doors, closing the garage. Every night before bed, I do a security sweep just in case one of my kids went to the garage and accidentally opened the garage door. Before bed, I walk through every house. I check every window. And it's not paranoid. It takes me like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
2 minutes. And I can't tell you how many dozens and dozens of times I found the door was unlocked. I thought it was locked. The window was open or the window was closed but not latched.
Yeah.
And so simple things like that. I mean, how easy would that be for somebody to gain access to my child's bedroom because I saw the window was closed, but I didn't just check that it was latched because my 2-year-old likes to flip latches. That's what 2-year-olds do.
Yeah.
So just being aware. And as part of an awareness, you've alluded to it twice and I was going to bring it up, but there's a guy called Jeff Cooper. He passed away a few years ago. Wrote a few great books, like To Ride, Shoot Straight, and Speak the Truth or something. But he was a Marine colonel. He's actually the founder, the inventor, if you will, of SWAT teams in LA in like the 1960s. He really knew his stuff. He created the Combat Hunter program in the Marine Corps. One of the things he came up, though, was called Cooper's Color Codes. And so this is just a way to think through situational awareness. And so he has 4 codes: white, yellow, well, I guess technically not 4 unless you inject some military in it, but these different codes. So white is like a sheep. All right, if you think white, think a sheep. This is somebody who is just blithely unaware of their surroundings. This is the mom who's focused on the kid not running in the street and holding a car seat in the other hand, and she's just trying to get the kids loaded with a whole bunch of groceries. Yep. And she's completely unaware of the gentleman who's just 2 cars over looking for her specifically because he saw she's busy with kids and her hands are with groceries. She's already the target, and she doesn't know it. And so this is somebody who's in the white. They have no situational awareness. They're on their phone with both earbuds in public. They're absolutely not paying attention to their surroundings. You never want to be in the white when you're in public. If you're in your house, you can be in the white, but that's really about the only place that you should be. Even in church, you're surrounded by people you love. Well, that's also a great target for bad guys, as we know from recent shootings. And so we don't want to be in the white anywhere besides our own house. The next level up would be the yellow. And so yellow is simply awareness, right? I'm paying attention to my surroundings. I don't have both earbuds in. My nose isn't buried in my phone. I know where my kids are, but my head's on a swivel. When I'm at the park, I'm looking around. I'm not just completely engrossed talking to the other moms. I'm not just talking with a mom while keeping an eye on my kid, which is what most ladies would do. I'm also going to look around. I'm going to actually physically turn a circle, turn my head side to side all the way and just see if there's a creepy guy coming up.
Oh, that car just pulled up and parked. Did anybody get out of it?
Right.
Okay. They're there. I'm just aware.
And that's all it is. I'm just paying attention. After that, you have the orange. And so orange is where we start putting a plan and we make what's called trigger lines, or if this, then that. And so this is, I'm in the yellow, so I notice there's 3 gentlemen walking on the other side of the road. Now, I'm aware of that, so I've kind of targeted in, like this might become a threat. And so now I create a plan. I'm not going to actually do anything yet, but I'm going to create a plan where, okay, if they cross the street, I'm going to take my kids and I'm going to duck into this store and go talk to the front desk lady. So there's at least a witness. If somebody becomes aggressive, I'm going to put my hand on my gun, sort of a thing. I'm going to pull my purse around so I can gain access to my concealed carry.
Defeat the garment.
Right.
Yeah.
Just unzip the jacket so I can get to it faster. And so you're just putting a plan in place. That's really all the oranges. So white, you're not paying attention. You're a sheep ready to be slaughtered. Yellow, you're aware, you're alert, you're paying attention. Orange, you've actually zeroed in on something that could become a threat. And so you put a plan together. And then you go into condition red. Red is where you're taking action. It doesn't mean that you're fighting and shooting someone. Red could literally be, okay, now I am going to duck in and talk to the front desk lady. Yeah. So they crossed that line. Now I'm going to take my action. That could be anything from screaming for help, running away, all the way up through taking someone's life. It's when you're in action mode.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, obviously, ideally, you would already have a plan in place.
Yeah.
Ideally, you would already be aware.
Hopefully someone didn't take you to red from white by doing something to you.
Right.
And now you're reacting.
Right.
And you're just, oh no, someone's grabbed me. What do I? And hopefully you know what you would do then too.
Right.
So that if, because sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes someone really can surprise you, even if you're aware. If they're really determined to, like, this is just the reality. But 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100 times, I think, even if you get to red, a lot of times it's like they crossed the street, I ducked in, turns out 3 college kids. It wasn't a threat.
Yeah.
But women particularly need to be thinking that a strong man by myself, I'm absolutely not up to that task without an equalizer, like a plan, help, a weapon, training, some kind of equalizer where you're absolutely not. Yeah. My wife, Lexy, we talked about this, I think, on the podcast once, but she was seriously convinced about 2 years ago that I would beat her in like a wrestling match, but that she could hold her own for like a second or two. Oh. And I was like, I didn't wrestle my wife, guys. Like, don't.
That's a missed opportunity.
I should have, but I said, Lexy, I want you to just try to, I'm going to kneel down and I want you to try to just move me towards the ground like you're going to pin me. And she couldn't move me at all. I mean, like, she was shocked because most women haven't been in praise the Lord, haven't been in a physical altercation with a man. They don't realize just how far the gap is between an average. I'm not a jack. I mean, I'm an average guy.
Sure.
Lexi's not a weakling.
Yeah.
She's very active, works out, does, she would have no chance. Absolutely zero chance without help, training, or an equalizer and a weapon.
Yeah, the average 14-year-old boy has the same strength as a 30-year-old woman.
Wow.
When I was in the military, they started introducing women into combat roles, which I of course disagree with. But part of the reason I disagree with it is theological, but also practical. Yeah, we conducted studies where women were just radically inferior to men in every single physical metric besides tolerance of pain. That was the only one where they could perhaps match us, and they only passed us by like a small percentage. Physically, in terms of strength, in terms of endurance, in terms of injury, in terms of everything. Yeah. And these were like cream of the crop women too. This was like a Marine Corps woman trying to gain access to the infantry. Like, these are women who like work out 4 hours a day. And even still, they were like nothing compared to an average guy. Yeah. They still couldn't do it. And that's not to say that some women who work out aren't stronger than some men, but.
Yeah, right. These are general rules and principles that God has built into the physical makeup of men and women. Their telos, what they're for, how he made them.
And so you want some sort of, as you said, you want an equalizer. Tasers can work. Pepper spray, 17% of the population is immune to any effect of pepper spray.
Really?
Yep, 17% of the population is immune. However, when it works, it usually like kicks butt.
And even if I got, my lady pepper spray once, and then I realized that she had no idea how to use it. Or
you got to train.
The fact that pepper spray is with you will not be a magical talisman if you're in condition white.
And the guy's already on top of you.
And he wraps you up arms.
Yeah.
Then pepper spray will do, it doesn't know. It won't leap out and pepper spray him in the face. Unless okay, I'm walking out to my car, the sun is setting, I need to have it in my hand. Yeah. I need to have it ready to go, literally in my dominant hand.
Uncapped,
free.
Off,
I don't have a kid in my dominant hand. I'm looking around. If I see again, I'm going to make a plan. If I see somebody near my car, I'm going to wait. Or I'm going to go ask an employee. And Lexi's done this. Yeah. Employees have walked my wife out to the car before. And in none of those cases did it turn out that she was in real danger. Doesn't matter. She did the right thing.
Yeah. Avoidance is the best tool.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a big, strong, I'm 6'4", 250. I would rather avoid a fight.
Absolutely.
I would rather avoid a fight. I don't want, because even if it comes out where I'm on top and totally legally justified, I still have cops coming to do reports. I still have to go to court. I still have to. And I just don't want that. Yeah. I'd rather just stay inside for 5 more minutes till the creepy guy walks away out of boredom, and then I'll go load my family in the car. Yep. How much more so if I'm a 140-pound wife?
Yeah, you see this with like women jogging alone without. There are some simple. I'm not saying a woman can never jog alone, but or walk alone or something like that. But having the extra step of awareness plus an equalizer.
Yeah,
that is a game changer. Even just you imagine if you're a woman running around and you have one of those. I know they make glove mounted or hand mounted like pepper spray systems, things like that, or like some sort of equalizer weapon. A guy waiting to sexually assault or assault a woman jogging alone, he's probably going to let that one pass by.
Yeah.
More likely to if she's clearly aware.
Yeah.
She sees him and makes eye contact. I see you. Makes some kind of action, clearly prepared. Not worth the hassle.
Yeah, I had a friend who his wife was sexually assaulted in California.
Oh, man.
And she was like leaving, I think it was Walmart or something like that at night in Southern California. And so super traumatic and horrible. The lesson learned from that was the guy was like waiting by her car between cars at night. They had the lights on, like there's security cameras right on Walmart's door. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And so what she did is every time she would leave Walmart, she would hit the panic button on her car. And what that did, and I'm not saying like every woman needs to do this all the time, but it's going to scare away anyone who's standing right next to her car. And then anyone who is there is going to obviously look towards that car going off, which is going to, again, scare off the guy because no one wants witnesses for any
That's
sort
actually
of crime.
Genius.
Yeah, so every single time she walked out of a building, she would just hit the panic button for like 3 seconds. And that's going to scare off a bad guy or draw attention from a bunch of witnesses. So,
and I think a lot of women, like you said, are like, I don't want to draw. I'm embarrassed.
Right.
Like you really have to, in an ideal world, of course, we want to think well of everybody around us. But like the saying goes from the person whom you will know, what is it? Be kind and have a plan to kill everybody.
Yeah, General Mattis. Be professional, be polite, have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
Yeah. So you're not actually assuming really that everybody you meet is evil and wicked and a rapist, but you're prepared if they turn out to be, because some people are genuinely, in the world we live in, there are absolutely wicked people for whom justice would be for them to die. So you have to be thinking.
Do I need to look under this table right now for a shotgun mounted underneath, like Tombstone Kurt Russell style, pointed right at my crotch? Yeah,
it is. There is a button that I have. It's a foot button.
My chair tips over.
No, it's actually it is funny though. Like as we were talking, I was thinking that even with the physical disparity between you and I, if I surprised you in the right it wouldn't matter. It'd be over. Yep. It wouldn't matter how much combat you've been in, how much training.
Right.
That's how powerful this principle of surprise is. Yeah. It creates an obstacle you cannot overcome. And I mean, there's some scenarios where it's just you did everything right and stuff happens.
Sure.
But man, how many of those can you with not letting the first time you think about security and these things being the time it happens.
And that's where that alertness, that awareness comes into play. Because it's so easy. Oh my goodness. As a housewife with a few kids, it's so easy to be distracted not distracted, but focused on your children and what you're working on. You've got 12 chores to do. And as a man, it's the same thing. You got work. I'm trying to go with the kids.
Yep.
You got to pay attention to your surroundings. And so to that end, point number 5 here, there is a very, very high likelihood, like well above the 80 percentile, high likelihood that a man will not be present during a break into his house. And so you have this responsibility to equip your family to be prepared.
Yeah.
The vast majority, it's 58%. So almost 6 out of 10 break-ins happen between noon and 3 p.m.
Wow.
They happen because they know the husband's gone to work. The wife probably has kids taking a nap and big kids are at school, in modern America or general America. And so that's your prime target. Darkness is great if you don't want to be seen, but guess what? Everyone's also home.
Yeah.
There's a chance that, they're out running errands or kids taking naps, as I just described. And so most of the time, break-ins, whether violent or just, criminal, burglary, something like that, will happen in the afternoon. And so while you should take training, and you shouldn't just go and shoot paper targets, you should do actual tactical training as a man. You should do some of that as a lady. If somebody's wrestling on top of you, can you draw your gun from your purse, sort of a thing. But I'm not trying to turn everyone into a warrior, just somebody who's prepared and knows what their capabilities as well as their limitations are.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they're John Wick, but a 2-on-1 fight, you're usually going to lose.
I actually don't think I'm John. I know that I'm not John Wick. Let me be completely clear. I am 100% certain that I'm not John Wick, or even one of the bad guys that he kills. Like, let's be honest.
I'm that bystander who like just caught a bullet. So.
I'm the bystander who was like eating a hot dog, walking down the street, and like, oh, look at that, and then all of a sudden I just get hit by a truck or something in the chase scene. Sure. So anyway, sorry.
No, that's like, but the point is, like, even with tactical training and such, that might be completely irrelevant when you're at work and your wife is at home and she's the target. You're not going to be the target. She is.
Yeah.
And so we need to think through, again, all of these points that we've talked to. This is kind of why I bring this as its own point. As a lady, don't be afraid to be familiar with firearms. If your husband has guns in the house, you want to make sure that you at least know how to handle them safely.
Yeah. In
case your 6-year-old somehow finds an unlocked gun, which, as a tangent, if you have guns in your house, you better keep them locked up. If the whole point of a firearm is to protect your family, the worst thing you can do is have your family be killed by your own firearm.
In fact, isn't that one of the most common ways that people get?
If you read the stories, and obviously we can't see me right now, but most 4 and under children shoot themselves with a gun, and most like 5 to 9-year-olds shoot a sibling with a gun. And the reason for that is because of their hand size. So a child under 4 can't pull the trigger with their trigger finger. So if you've ever watched like a 3-year-old boy handle a gun, like an actual full-size gun, not a toy gun that's fit for his hand, he can't squeeze it. So what do? They turn it right towards their chest. And it's always pointed right at their face or their chest. There's no way they're surviving that.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you watch the news, most 4-year-olds and under actually shoot themselves if they gain access to a firearm.
Yeah.
Whereas most 5 and above shoot their sibling because they think they're just playing cowboys and Indians and they shoot their sibling.
Yeah.
Because they are big enough to hold the gun. And so please, as a side, I wasn't planning on talking about this very much, but if you have a gun in your house, you need to lock it up. Even if you don't have children right now, I've seen where animals have accidentally hit the trigger and the gun's gone off while you're sleeping and it's right next to your bedside, so it hits you or your wife. Neighborhood friends come over. So, yeah, keep your gun locked. I have several guns in my house, and they're all locked with a simple, button safe, and it takes 3 seconds to gain, less than that, to gain access. So in the middle of the night, I can gain access to a firearm almost instantly, but it's also completely protected from my children. So, yeah, lock them up.
If you have that defensive depth, you're not thinking, well, if somebody all of a sudden, the first time I know they're there is when they're standing over my bed, what will I do?
Right.
You need to realize that that's a far less likely scenario if you do your job correctly, and that the greater danger is, of course, my child getting access or one of their friends, because that's the other thing. You think, I have taught my kids, hopefully you have, and you shouldn't rely on that, but I've tested my kids with stuff and with fake guns that look very real and just to see what they would do. And but you don't know, their friend might come in. Even if you didn't plan for them to be there, neighborhood kid, hey, come in, get a drink of water, whatever. They take a wrong door, they're in your room, they see a gun, they pick it up.
Right.
That's what little boys do.
That's what happens all the time.
Little boys see a gun, they want to touch it.
Sure.
If your kids, another thing that we do is when my kids want to see a gun, I'll show them the gun. I'll safely let them get familiar with it. And I think you do a similar thing. You give your kids, it's not this mystical.
Right. Take away the mysticism.
Like, oh, it's hidden. I need to get it in secret because daddy will never let me see it.
Right.
Oh, they want to see it. They're boys. Even, little girls can, actually my little girls have very little interest in the gun. Legit, it's not a stereotype. They just, Daphne.
Sure. Yeah, mine too.
It's like 1% care. The boys are like, yes.
Although my daughter sleeps with a pocket knife next to her bed.
Does she?
And a Nerf gun.
She's prepped.
She does.
She's a real prepper.
Yeah.
That's funny. Oh, anyway. Yeah, but as a man, you're right. It's just the threat is going to be highly likely to happen. Again, just because criminals aren't dumb.
Yeah.
They know that you are, even if you're just an average guy, you're going to be far more likely to make their job difficult than a unguarded woman is.
Yeah, wrestle them. I mean, honestly, I've been hit in the face so many times. I used to teach martial arts in the Marine Corps. Like one of the day one things you do is you literally line everyone up, you partner up, and they each take one shot to the face.
Oh,
just to teach you, like, you can take this, but it hurts.
It sucks. Yeah.
But one of the things that I would bring up is it's so important that your family has this plan, that we've got defense in depth, that your wife knows how to pay attention, that you know how to pay attention, that guns are locked up, that all of these things are in place before the situation arises. So just kind of taking us back to point one.
Yeah.
It's just critically important to think through these things and not bury our head in the sand and go into denial and say they'll never happen to me. Again, that's why people say this can't be happening.
Yeah.
Because they think they've trained their mind to believe it's impossible that this would happen to me. So just thinking through some of these things, is not enough. You've got to take action.
Yeah.
Right. And so go change the screws in your locks. Go change the screws in your hinges. Go buy for seriously less than like $40 a couple of solar lights, or for less than $50, go buy a bunch of alarms you can put on your windows. $10 a deadbolt on your front and back door. I mean, we're not talking about spending thousands of dollars here.
Yeah.
In fact, for under $500, I think I did almost all of the security improvements in my house under $500.
Yeah.
One-time fee. So yeah, we just need to think through these things and then take some action on them. You want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, as Christians, we know you actually shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Our heart is wicked.
So last question to wrap up. I want to bring us all the way back to a first scenario that you laid out and ask you what she should do. Man walking in the backyard. What should she do?
Absolutely.
He's not home.
Yep.
This actually happened to us, so I want to know what you say.
Yeah. So step one is awareness. Awareness to everyone. You, need to be aware of that man, and he doesn't just surprise you randomly. You need your children aware, so you start screaming at the kids, get inside, right? You make noise.
Yeah.
Get the neighbor's attention.
Yeah.
The neighbors hear you, get in the house, get in the house.
Yeah.
You want that. You want that awkwardness of the neighbors looking at the weirdo in your yard.
Because he shouldn't be there.
He should not be there.
Yeah. It's he's made the problem, not you.
Right. So you have this obligation right away to turn it into a situation, make some drama. That's fine. So step one, create awareness for yourself, for your children, for the guy who knows he's no longer in secret. He's there. That's going to either force him to show his hand or run away. Right? If he's intent on harming you, he's going to do it quickly now. Yeah. Which is why you need those kids in the house and why you need to shut that door with a good deadbolt and so forth. Yeah. So create time and space. That's what we're doing. We're creating awareness so that we can create time and space. Now he has to kick in my 3-inch screwed door 17 times before he gains access to the house. I've got my phone hopefully nearby. Yeah. 911 really quick. Hopefully as a woman at home by myself, I have access to a firearm without having to run all the way downstairs to the gun safe with 5 kids on my hip and try to remember the combination while my hand is shaking. Yeah. Right. This is why I'm a huge proponent of you should have a household gun with relatively easy access for this specific scenario. For somebody trying to kick in your door, you can't wait 17 minutes for the cops to show up. Yeah. You have 17 kicks till he's in the door now. And so, you with a firearm is not enough. And, an old shotgun buried down in grandpa's safe in the basement's not enough. You need your wife to actually have access to a firearm. The kids need to go to a safe spot. You don't want your wife. The children's instinct, of course, is they're scared and they're going to want to hug mommy's skirt. Yeah. She needs to have, if there's an older kid, even not like a teen, but like a 10-year-old who can take the other kids upstairs and show them how to hide under the bed or something. Yeah. The kids need to be removed just in case this guy persists and actually kicks in the door, and she needs to have the gun off safe, pointed at the door, ready to go. Yeah. And know how to use it. Know how that works. Not just go to the range once a year for some fun time with husband, a little bit of training, right? Yeah. And so she needs to understand how it would work. And to be honest, if that guy were persistent enough to kick in the door and she fires off 3 shots and misses all 3, there's a good chance he's going to run away. Very, very good chance. Very good chance. Yeah, very good chance, especially because we're talking about a daytime neighborhood scenario. And she's already called 911. And they hear gunshots. The cops are going to get there faster. Yeah, they'll go, oh, this is real. This is real. This isn't a paranoid housewife call. Yeah, or the I'm mad my neighbor's dog is barking again for the 3rd time this week, or his chicken has escaped or something. Shots fired. Shots are fired. Right. Yeah, I think that's really good. And even a lot of ladies are probably thinking well, what if he's just the milkman or he's just whatever? Well, then he should know that he's in a place he shouldn't be. Right. And he's actually should be I'm so sorry. He would. But even maintaining the space to say, stop, don't come closer. He'll be really embarrassed if he's a utility worker or something. Sure. But better to be embarrassed than to let somebody, because if he keeps coming, he's oh no, I'm so sorry. No, stop. Right. Ladies need to have permission
and no, and even I think maybe practice saying, like, just getting it out to say, no, stop, don't come closer.
Right. I think I've trained fully a third of our congregation in concealed carry at this point.
You have.
And that's one of the exercises we do is I will have everyone, but particularly women, like stand up and in a bold voice, stop, get back, get down, get back, And it's funny because I will see people who I know. I go to church with, and they will blush and even like start sweating out of embarrassment.
Yes.
Even though everyone else is doing it too, because it's so against our modern culture sensibilities. And so,
wow.
Yeah, you do need to practice a loud voice.
Yeah.
Get back. So,
well, that's excellent. Well, thanks for coming on, Joshua. This was really helpful. This is the longest Bright Hearth episode of all time. No. But I was going to say, I think that I'm going to tell everybody, no, listen to this one. Listen to the whole thing, because there will be something. Even if you're a prepared guy, there will be at least one or two things that will get you thinking, whether it's a dechoker or a fire.
Sure.
There will be at least one thing that you can practically do. And I'll just give you this last exhortation. Don't just think, oh, that's good, I need to do it, and then move on to the next. Stop, take a note, set a reminder, go on, buy the door thing, buy the screws, get a time. You actually need to make the plan now while you're thinking about it and while you're like, yep, because otherwise it will happen that the emergency situation is when you realize you don't have a medical kit. The emergency situation is when you realize you weren't prepared. So take the time right now, make a note, set the reminder, do the next thing. Don't think you have to have everything tomorrow, but do the next thing and then do the thing after that. And you will be far more prepared, and you'll be ready to help other people who aren't as prepared. You'll be ready to step in. And I'm not just talking men, ladies too, ladies just as much. You'll be the mom at the park when there's only other moms around and there's a bleed that needs to be stopped or there's choking that needs to happen. So think about your car glove box, your car medical kit, as we've told you before. Think about your home medical kit. Those two, you're covered most of the time when you have those two things covered. And churches, think about your church security and church medical kit there, and walk through some specific scenarios. Thanks for listening, you guys. We'd encourage you, if you haven't already, check out, there's a link in the description for our Patreon channel, which is one of the best ways to support the show, continue help us making it possible, covering the costs associated with producing this show and making it quality. We hope that it's helpful each time. And also, we've got some great bonuses there. We do a special patron exclusive episode each week called In the Kitchen, where we talk about often something related to the main episode, answer listener questions and feedback. Today, if Joshua has time, I'm going to try to get him to walk us through his everyday carry setup and just how a man might think about that, and maybe even a lady as well in the purse. And, again, with that. So with that said, thanks for listening, guys. We hope this has been helpful for you. May the Lord bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you. And we'll see you next time on Bright Hearth.